residents, our leaders, and all of our employees in Miami-Dade County, and that you guide us in making the proper decisions here that are the best for our residents, always keeping them in mind. And I pray that you guide us today and always. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Have the record reflect that we have Commissioner Keon Hardiman here with us. All right, Mr. Attorney.
Madam Chair, the items for this committee's consideration are those listed in the final printed agenda, along with the changes memo. One correction to the changes memo for item 1G2, correcting it to say that the deferral is to no date certain rather than to the June 2025 meeting. With that, reasonable opportunity can be extended at this time.
I know we have some add-ons, but we'll deal with that later. We'll be opening the reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard. I have only one card, and that is for 1E1, 2A, and 2E. So one is a public hearing. The other two are board items. Either way, it's still the same time. And the speaker that I have listed is Kenneth Brown. If there's anyone else that would like to speak in the reasonable opportunity to be heard, please come on down.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Kenneth Brown, 12300 Northwest 17th Avenue. I came here this morning to speak about the issue about the mayor pretty much cannot, the budget has not been balanced. But whenever the budget does get balanced, I wonder if the whole community will be considered in this act. The only thing that I realized and figured out that there's still a lot of homeless in the Overtown, Brownsville, and Liberty City area. These areas has been looked upon as areas to where it's not going to be developed until all of the people that's originally resided there moved out. Now they develop in the area. Every other area and every other community get developed. But when it comes down to Liberty City, Overtown, and Brown Sub, these areas are being targeted to be sold to the developers. So however they're doing that, they actually is making off like a bandit, because developers actually coming into the community, buying up the community, and they selling out the community. And every time I come to approach this bench, I'm always being approached or resistant. And from my last understanding, I thought that Russia was the ally of Cuba. So if that's the case, why are we getting treated like third world or third class citizens? You know, I'm 6 generations right here in the United States. But it seems like every time I come up to speak, I get pushed aside, just like my foreparents got pushed aside, just like the people that's live here is getting pushed aside. So if that's the case, and if we're not wanted, won't everyone else just go back to their homeland, and then we can just start this thing all over again from zero? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wants to speak? All right. With that, we will close the reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard. Mr. Attorney?
Motion to set the agendas in order.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Do you guys want, we have several presentations. Do you want to do the presentations first, or do you want to do the poll list?
I prefer presentations first, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm happy to do the presentations. We don't want people waiting here. Mr. Attorney, we'll start with the presentations.
On your presentations, you have item 1E1, presentations by county departments regarding the fiscal year 2025-2026 proposed county budget submission.
Through the chair,
Yes,
good morning.
good morning.
Thank you for allowing me to address you and the committee on the current budget outlook and our financial landscape for the county. For those who do not know me, I'm Carla Denise Edwards, Chief Administrative Officer. The portfolio that I oversee includes the Office of Management and Budget, as well as strategic procurement, personnel and internal operations, internal compliance, and IT. As I enter my second year in this role and my third budget cycle, I've been reflecting on how much the county has evolved over the past 2 years. When our esteemed mayor came into office 4 years ago, the county was experiencing extremely difficult budget cycles. And while the global pandemic was not a great start to her tenure as the county's mayor, the one-time funding that was provided to the county from the state and the federal government enabled us to navigate through these very, very rough times. And you all know that all too well. As we came out of the pandemic, our role saw increased growth, and the mayor and the board very wisely cut taxes to put more money in our residents' pockets during a time of ongoing economic hardship for so many families. And I do appreciate the gentleman who spoke this morning because we're still experiencing some of those hardships. But the county did a good job of weathering the storm during COVID, and we're confident we'll weather this new one. We are Miami-Dade County. So as you all know, better than most, the combination of forces has created a perfect storm of economic challenges. So I'm going to try to, in the next 12 to 15 minutes, share with you what some of those challenges are, the response to those challenges by the administration, and then our 25 budget status and the projections for 2026. Here we have all the experts that were requested to speak to the specificity. However, please note, there's still a lot of uncertainty. The headwinds that we faced are pretty severe. So many of you who understand and appreciate sailing, because we live in Miami-Dade County, knows that you want the wind to go with you, not against you. We have 3 significant headwinds that are going against us. One is the increased cost from the new constitutional offices. The second, the real and anticipated threats to revenue. And then lastly, our favorite topic, which is market volatility. As things go up, prices go up, the cost of running the county goes up as well. When the amendment or Article 10 was passed and created 5 new county governments, we had to establish offices in record time. Unfortunately, it caused the county to lose its economy of scale due to the significant upfront cost created when we created these new offices. The budget that I will show you shortly, we planned for the needs of these offices and we gave them the same growth rate that we included in the county and its respective departments. This is the method that we have used consistently, and it has worked. The second headwind are the real and anticipated threats to revenue. Given everything happening in the global economy at the state level, we anticipate a potential reduction in tax revenue. This could have an impact on everything we do, particularly our ability to provide the essential services that our county residents not only need, but have come to expect. It's really important to note that the numerous proposals in Tallahassee have not been incorporated into our budget projections. The loss of revenue that we have is based on our trend and our forecast, not on what's happening up north. The final headwind is the dreaded market instability. Some of us like to use the word inflation. It is driving up the county's cost, while also impacting the affordability for the community at large. Our community is suffering from the high cost of everything. So when the prices go up for you at home, guess what? They go up for us as well. Everything from construction, goods and services, and simply utilities. So we need to make sure that we're prepared for that. So there is a teeny bit of good news, which is in January, we all met. I don't know if you remember, Miami Senior High School. Mayor Cava gave us the State of the County address, and she warned us about this. She prepared us by creating the WISE 305 plan, which has 4 pillars. These pillars, in essence, can serve as our anchors, helping us steady through the current fiscal year and preparing us for the next fiscal year. I don't want to go into detail into all of these. I remember last week, Commissioner Bermudez pointed out that these are on our website in very good guideposts. But I do want to make sure that we appreciate some of the work that has been done. We've put a pause on hiring, travel, raises, and promotions for many of the positions that are not consumer-facing or classified as essential. We've also made significant investments in technology with the support of this board that's helping us reduce costs and prepare for the future. Automating key functions is going to help us as our workforce declines due to pending retirements and the global workforce shortages. I know that each of you on the committee, specifically, I know Chairwoman Regalado and Commissioner Cohen-Higgins, you've been laser focused on how are we saving money and how are we doing that without interrupting our local businesses and the lives of our residents, because they should come first. So this can only be done by improving operations and cutting red tape. So we've merged some significant departments together and streamlined functions. So for the next slide, I'm going into the numbers for 2025, our current fiscal year. This is basically a reminder that the county is a $12.7 billion organization. In my old life in corporate, I would have called it a business. But a business actually has control over both things, revenue and expenses. Our administration has very little control over how much money we receive from one year to the next. This means we have to make do with what we have and fulfill the needs and forego the wants, especially during difficult times. Of that $12.7 billion, 37% is capital, and $8 billion, or 63%, is for our operating expenses. I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about our operating budget that we're planning for the upcoming fiscal year. As you know, half of our operating expenses are attributed to the proprietary departments, including aviation, water and sewer, seaport, and solid waste management. That's a total of $4.1 billion. These budgets are set by the available funding. The other half, 48% of our expenses, are supported by the tax revenue. These taxes cover everything from the constitutional offices, who I know you'll hear from later today, our general government, which are the departments in my portfolio, corrections, transportation and public works, parks, fire rescue, and Jackson Health System, as well as our beloved libraries. So getting through the current fiscal year with a set amount of money has been challenging, but we're making it through. Looking, for those who are still paying attention, the next slide has something on it that no accountant ever wants to see, which is red. What this means is that for fiscal year 26, the cost of doing business has gone up, but the revenues are not keeping pace. In some cases, revenues are going down, and I'll explain that very briefly. As you can see, the demands on the general fund for the upcoming year are significant. Our projected revenues and carryover for fiscal year 26 is $3.2 billion. It's approximately $6 million less than what we had in the previous year. So I think that needs to kind of sink in. We're starting with a base that's lower than the previous year in terms of the money we anticipate coming into the government. The projected expenses, based on our calculations to date, are $3.6 billion, leaving us with a projected deficit of $387 million. So part of this is that expenses have gone up, but I also think it's important to remember that our projections of revenue have gone down. It's really important to note that when OMB pulled these numbers together, we assumed in that number a 6 to 7% growth in the county's tax rolls, and we're hoping that will cover the expenses that we need if we do some really heavy lifting and think about the things that we have to do and some of the things that we can no longer do. You'll see on the right side of the slide the expense drivers. Those expense drivers include the tax collector's commission, recurring grants. If you remember, I spoke about COVID and we had money coming in. We spent that money to give one-time funding, but we haven't stopped giving the one-time funding. Legislative directives that have not been budgeted, the transit operational shortfall, which is not foreign to us, that's something that we've known about for a while, and then the additional contractual expenses, including labor. We have pre-negotiated our CBAs that included a 3% increase for this fiscal year and a 4% increase for next fiscal year. And then the shortfall in revenue that I spoke to you about, which is $65 million. In addition to the fact that we included the constitutional offices in the projected expenses with the 6.1% growth rate, the constitutionals have submitted budgets per their mandate of May 1st that includes an additional $86 million. We have received proposals from the sheriff, the clerk, and the supervisor of elections. They're looking for money to cover their growth and their desired expenses. This has not been budgeted. If the board approves what has been requested by the constitutional offices beyond the 6% growth that we budgeted, our forecasted deficit would be $473 million. So, Chairwoman Regalado and your dear shipmates, we have some very difficult decisions to make. If we don't pivot and we go straight into the storm, it could be devastating. What we really need to do is focus on getting a balanced equation. This means managing both the expense and the revenue side of the equation. It also means that we need to look at our fees, the things that we must do annually and that have been legislated, such as a solid waste fee, things that we have to do in order to stay in compliance, such as water and sewer fees, and evaluating close to, I can't even count the number of fees that we collect that may have not been updated or renewed for the last 12 to 15 years. Some of those include transit, as well as our recreational programs and parks. It's our joint responsibility, commissioners, to address these fiscal challenges without a recommendation from the administration for a millage increase. That is not the strategy that the mayor is deploying. We are deploying fiscal stewardship. We're thinking about our core services that have to be maintained and provided, and we're looking at the things that we will not be doing any longer. Before I conclude, because I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, I do want to take just a moment not only to thank you, the board, Madam Chairwoman Regalado, and Vice Chair Cohen-Higgins, who invited us to do this presentation, but the entire OMB team led by our budget director, David Clodfelter, who's been collaborating with each of the county departments on building a budget that we can present to this board in a couple months that we hopefully can live with, and that helps us get through this perfect storm to the other side. And so with that, I will pause and I'll take any questions, or we can ask the team to respond accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair, it's your item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and first of all, congratulations on your new appointment as our Appropriations Chairwoman. I look forward to working with you as our chief has so eloquently analogized weathering this storm that we are now entering into. Thank you, Chief, for that presentation and for sharing the glib forecast that is among us here in Miami-Dade County with a budget shortfall of close to $500 million, and where we are sailing in uncertain waters, frankly, because those are not firm and fixed figures. Those are projected numbers that we will, I believe, have more concrete awareness of as we get closer to the June 1st date and deadline. I appreciate the presentation, and the idea in bringing the presentation was a simple one for all of us to start preparing for what we have known has been coming, and that what we know is coming in September, and so that we can start taking as many measures as we possibly can as a board, as an administration, and as a community to figure out how we are going to solve this massive budget shortfall. It's clearly not business as usual in Miami-Dade County anymore. I appreciate the presentation. I assume that in future presentations, or the discussion will commence now and will continue to be ongoing, we will have very detailed conversations about where cuts are going to be made in order to close this gap. It is our number one primary function as commissioners here, is to pass this balanced budget, and currently we're upside down quite a bit of money. So I certainly look forward to working with you and with everyone else as we navigate these waters. The questions that I have, and I'm looking at our budget projections and our 5-year budget projection as early as last year, right? Because when we pass a budget every year, always project 5 years into the future. So my question for you, Chief, is, did we anticipate this type of a budget shortfall as recently as last year? Because my recollection does not bring up, I know there's been warnings, but when I look at the 5-year projections, it does not show a budget shortfall of $500 million in our projections as early as last year. So can you speak to that?
Yep. And through the chair, I will respond, but I also have asked David Clodfelter to come up, because I think you pointed out something that's critically important. Our budget book every year has the forecast, and we update the forecast. In January, when we updated the forecast, that was really our first glimpse into what we were seeing in terms of changes in revenue and the impact of the constitutional offices and the growth that's been expected or anticipated. And so I don't think I could have told you $500 million a year ago, but we do regular updates on the forecast. And the minute that we did that is the minute that we started meeting with you to share this glib news. If you'd like more information on the actual forecast and what has been projected, David is more than happy to answer some of those questions.
Thank you, Chief. What is the projected shortfall that we noted in our 5-year projection last year? And
For David Clodfelter, Office of Management and Budget. For next year in countywide alone is about $53 million.
No. What was the projected shortfall last year, previous to this year? What is it that we anticipated the shortfall would be that we're currently in now? What was the projection?
So that's reflected in the 5-year, which is approximately $53 million based on this year's adopted budget. The following year, 25-26, at that point in time, for countywide alone was about $53 million.
Okay, so we anticipated a $53 million shortfall. We have a $500 million shortfall.
We have a 387, assuming the details that Carla Denise just went over. A lot of this is based on timing, number one, and particularly a large portion of this was related to the implementation of the constitutional office of the tax collector. The tax collector, number one, needed to be elected. That official needed to choose whether he would be a fee officer or a county budget office. That determination is they chose to be a fee officer. So at that point, the 2% that he needs to charge for every taxing district equals about $107 million for countywide alone. So that was a significant change that at the point in time, we had no way of knowing what that impact would be.
And thank you for clarifying that. And just by way of context, you've been here with us for a number of years. When was the previous time that Miami-Dade County has projected a $500 million budget shortfall or anything even close to that?
08, 09, 2009, 2010, that
Okay,
was,
when we were in the middle of a very serious financial situation. That helps because I think it lays the groundwork for where we are and the kind of numbers that we are dealing with. And I mentioned, it's not business as usual, and we look forward to working with everybody. It's the reason that I had invited our constitutional officers, and I'm grateful for the ones that are joining us and that we're able to present presentations today, and hopefully we'll continue to do so in the future. Because I understand that the constitutional officers are creating a larger gap than we had anticipated. My colleague had said for quite some time that we needed to put money away in anticipation of those gaps. The amount of money that I understand that we put aside for our constitutional officers was, I think, only $32 million. I could be wrong, but I know we put money away. It's certainly not large enough. But to our constitutional officers who are partners, we all have to be rowing in the same direction on this, right? We can't have a huge budget shortfall and then budget requests that are 14% higher than what they were year over year. So I know we're going to tackle each of those as the appropriate time comes, but I'm very grateful for your presentation. I look forward to the balance of the presentations, and I have nothing further at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. David, as a point of clarification, I remember when we first talked about this in 2020, and it took us, I think, almost 2 years to bring the item for the constitutional officers because of the holds. Keon will remember. We had said that it would be between 140 million to 220 because we didn't know, right? We didn't know. So back in 2022, we did say that. We were very clear. And that's when we decided that as part of the budget, we needed to start saving. We also talked about options in Tallahassee and the fiscal impact of the clerk, the fiscal impact of the sheriff, and the fiscal impact of the tax collector. So just for clarity's sake, we were always talking about a shortfall of at a minimum 140, and we were expecting that to go up. I think at some point we even talked about 280 if he became a fee officer. And I remember those conversations as we were talking about the constitutional officers. In terms of how much we squirreled away, I think the first year was 10. Where were we finally? Because there was also a raid on that fund. Correct? We created a fund. One of the requests that I made early on was to create a fund to prepare us. It was a reserve for the constitutional officers. How much money was put in? Because during the budgetary process, there were suggestions that were made, but money that was used for other things.
right, it was in the budget referred to as future services reserve. So that last week in the mid-year budget item, that reserve was allocated 100% to the constitutional offices.
Yeah, but how much was in it originally and how much did it change?
$32 million in this year's budget. The unallocated carryover in the mid-year item brought it a little over $40 million for a total.
But there were conversations during the budget where we talked about putting more into that. I remember.
To your point, we've had many conversations about adding money for the inevitable implementation of the constitutional offices. But to answer your question, yes, we've had conversations.
The board decided not to do that. So, because I just want clarity on the fact that we said that at a minimum, it was 140. And we had a fund, and the idea was to at least fund it to a minimum, and we didn't do that. So just to have some clarity on that point. In terms, as we continue with the presentation, the other thing that I want to mention, we talked about the mandate of the constitutional officers. Only 3 of them have the mandate to provide us with a budget by May 1st. We don't want anyone to think that the other 2 did not decide to do so. They simply have different deadlines. Their budget, they present to the state on a completely different timeline. So I just want to put that on the record as we go forward. Thank you. Don't go far, David.
I'll just stay here.
All right. Does anyone have any questions at this moment, or do you guys want to continue with the presentation? All right, we'll continue with the presentation then.
Next item is 1E2, the presentation by the constitutional officers regarding the fiscal year 2025-2026 proposed county budget.
Madam Vice Chair, this is your item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe our amazing Alina Garcia is here. We welcome you. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your presentation.
So important. Good morning. Congratulations to the new chairwoman, Raquel Regalado, and thank you for inviting us to do this presentation, and Vice Chair Cohen-Higgins, and thank you, Commissioner Roberto Gonzalez, for being here today, and Commissioner McGee, thank you also for being here, and our new member, Natalie Millán Orbiz, thank you so much. So as you all know, our tentative budget is submitted based on Florida statutes, board resolutions, and the transition agreement between our office and the county. Somebody's clicking, okay. The tentative operating budget for fiscal year 2025 through 2026 is $52 million, of which $47.5 million is requested from the general fund. The $47.5 million requested from the general fund is a slight decrease from the general fund contribution in this fiscal year when considering the adopted budget, mid-year budget amendment, and the portion of the SOE budget that was located in the county's non-departmental fund. So we're actually a little bit lower for 25-26 than we were for this year. Our fiscal year 2025-2026 capital budget request includes $4.1 million for voting tabulation scanner equipment, which was already approved by the board. The additional ask is for $1.7 million for voter check-in stations and needed improvements at the headquarter facilities. Our equipment is over 18 years old, and it's very important that technology, changes very quickly, so it's important that they're almost at the end of life to change them. So the priorities for the supervisor of elections is the acquisition of a leased facility, which we now cost approximately $2.5 million per year in base rent plus all other associated expenses. Voter education and outreach, opening of supervisor of elections branch offices, paving of overflow parking at Doral Park, continued upgrade of technology and voting systems, and continue exploring emerging technologies in the elections field to improve security and efficiency. The supervisor of elections challenges are the unknown fiscal impacts of implementing state and federal legislation, completing the transition from county to constitutional office, unscheduled special elections, recruitment of qualified temporary and poll workers, and county poll workers. That's very important. So I want to thank you all for your time. I ask for your support in approving our budget and your continued support providing county employee poll workers. That's super important for our job. So thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Do my colleagues have any questions for our supervisor of elections? Seeing none, I appreciate you presenting us with this budget overview, understanding that it's still fluid and that it's still in the works.
Of course.
It allows us to have a snapshot of what we are going to anticipate, and it allows you to showcase your fiscal responsibility and your stewardship of our precious tax dollars. So we greatly appreciate you being with us today. And I don't believe that there are any questions from my colleagues. So
Thank you very much.
thank you
Have
again.
a blessed day.
Thank you. You too. To the attorneys, do we have any additional presentations?
It was the constitutional officers, so it's at your leisure, Madam Vice Chair.
Good morning. How are you? Very familiar face. Welcome, Barbara. Thank you for joining us this morning, and you're going to be giving us the presentation of the Office of the Clerk and Comptroller.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Chairwoman who's not here, Vice Chairwoman, and members of the committee. Barbara Galvez, Chief Administrative Officer for the Clerk of the Court and Controller. Unfortunately, the clerk was not able to be here today. He had a previous engagement where he's speaking at the Law Day event this morning, so I will be quickly doing our presentation. Our budget remains the same. It's generally the same. It's supporting the same functions that are required under the Constitution. Only the portions that require county support are the ones reflected in this table of organization, where it reflects a total number of 440 positions. There is an increase from the prior year number of 17 positions. The overall budget reflects a growth of 11% in the general fund. This growth is comprised of two changes. One, there is a revenue swap that has been made. Previously, the IT funding model provided support to our finance and controller function. That source is no longer going to be provided, and so that has now been changed with general fund. That same general fund value will be reduced from the IT funding model side, and so it's really a revenue neutral change. In addition to that, the actual growth that we experienced in our budget associated with salary and fringe increases are the annualizations of COLA, the annualization of merit, the inclusion of the 3% or 4% COLA for April, as well as the changes in group health, FRS, and dental rates. It's actually a 4.5% growth if we eliminate that revenue that we did that change with, which is about $1.533 million more in that additional growth associated with those increases. In addition to that, I wanted to point out that you will see a change in our operating expenditures as it relates to banking fees or services. The banking contract is due to expire at September of 2025. We are currently in the process of putting out the RFP to replace that contract. We anticipate that as part of that change, banking fees will go up, since the contract that we currently have in place goes back to 2010. And we know the industry has changed and services have changed. The clerk of the court side of the house, which includes our clerk of the board, our county recorder, our marriage licenses, the value adjustment board, tax deeds, code enforcement, that area represents 10 positions more than we previously had in the prior year. Those positions are associated with support in the areas of procurement, HR, records management, and legal services. We did do a transfer, although you see there's a growth in those numbers. There is a transfer of positions that came from our controller side of the house over to the clerk side, because we consolidated the functions that are procurement and HR. On controller finance, this is where you see that revenue swap that's occurring that I mentioned with the IT funding model. In addition to that, you will also see new revenue for the controller side, which is the cost allocation for services that we are providing to the constitutional offices. So they are in fact offsetting some of the potential impact that the general fund would have had if you had continued supporting those functions as you did this year. Again, it includes the same types of increases related to the labor changes, the FRS changes, and the group health changes. In this function, we did have 7 positions more that were added to the budget. It was a net change. Again, it reflects the transfers to those other functions that we spoke about earlier, as well as it includes the banking fees changes that we talked about. I also want to point out that we are in the process, and you will be receiving a request for an extension of the existing banking contract to help us finalize the procurement of that, and that extension will be for a period of no more than 2 years. So we hope to get something to you very soon. It has to be before the board, before the September expiration date. And then lastly, we have our controller, our audit operations function. That remained exactly the same. We did not increase positions. There is additional revenue that's been reflected from a carryover. That is a product of services that we are charging for other entities that have asked for us to provide audit services. So that obviously offsets some of the costs that we would have asked from the general fund. And these numbers, by the way, already reflect the total adjustments included with the FRS changes that recently occurred based on the rates that were approved by the state legislature. So although the number presented by Dr. Edwards had 86 million, which we were a part of that number, it's actually gone down from the number that she had. So overall, if you look at what we're asking for from general fund growth from one year to the next, as I mentioned, it's $1.533 million, which is 4.5%, which is a lot lower than the 6% that Dr. Edwards mentioned. I also want to point out that our office did not receive any revenue or any requests from the mid-year supplemental item, so we did not access any of those funds in the reserve. And also, we have already been and have been and existed as a constitutional office prior to Amendment 10 existing. So our operations has not created the impact that is being reflected in the numbers that you're seeing on the screen or in your presentation. We just want to make sure that you're aware that we are conscious of that, and any opportunity that we have to return dollars back to the county, it will happen as part of our end-of-year process. Okay? Thank you very much.
Madam Vice Chair, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for the presentation. Similar to what I mentioned regarding our supervisor of elections, it allows us to know what's coming and to see what efforts you all are making. And I appreciate you highlighting the fact that you're at 4.5% growth, which is less than the 6% that was mentioned previously, and the fact that you didn't have any allocations in our mid-year budget. That allows you to showcase and tout this fiscal responsibility that we need to see more and more, and we're greatly appreciative of. So thank you for that presentation. I don't have any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Barbara, I have some questions. So in my prior life, I spent 4 years on the Treasury Committee, and I have a lot of questions about commercial paper and bonds. So now that you are, so just some background. When this was under our finance department, there was a section of that did what we at the county call commercial paper. And I learned a lot about this, fellow colleagues, at the school board, because when you hold amounts of money, you don't just hold them in interest-bearing accounts. You actually enter into short-term annuities. And those annuities can be anything from 3 months to 3 years. And there's a lot of different things that you can do with commercial paper, including borrow from it and then pay it off as you move forward. There's a lot of opportunities to do that at very low risk. It just takes, it's very time consuming. We'll just say that, it's very time consuming. One of the things that I would like to know as we move forward from our staff and also from the constitutional officers are the dates of these transfers. Because we're getting these numbers and we're not talking about when this money is being transferred, how long it is being held, right? And what is the finance strategy being utilized for that bucket of money. We keep talking about, what's not used gets returned to the county. That's all good and dandy. But I want to know how that's being invested. What is the growth of that? And what is the rate of return, and what happens to the differential. So I know that is your expertise. That's why I'm asking you about commercial paper. And I'm happy that you're at the office of the clerk doing that work. But I would love to drill down on that a little bit more. I actually spoke to the clerk, and I'll be meeting with you and him specifically about that. I don't know if you're charging a service for doing that commercial. You're not? Okay. It's a service. I'm just putting it out there. It's a service. But I think it's one of the things that we need more information on. And we need to match that up with when the deposits are being made and how long the money is being held. So that's my number one question, because you're the resident expert on that. Number two, since we are doing the procurement for, my understanding is right now the bulk of the constitutional officers, and we have several procurement items today for the office of the sheriff. One of the things that I think we should consider, and this goes to both parties, right? For example, we have some items here for ISD. You were just talking about you need an extension, so then you can put out, your RFP. It would be helpful for us if in these items there is a reference back to your budget line item. If that's not too onerous, because I just feel like, you're going to submit us a budget. We know from all the conversations that we've had about the constitutional officers, that the constitutional officers, specifically the sheriff, can move in between line items, right? So we've had that conversation when you were on this side, and that's always very concerning. But for us to maintain a grasp of what is happening with the constitutionals, I think the procurement items need to refer back to those line items. One thing is our procurement items refer back to the departments. We know that those departments have their specific funding. They're either following their funding mechanism or they're not. But the constitutionals are separate and apart from us. So I don't know if it would be too difficult for staff, but I think it would be important for us to kind of stay on the same page in terms of, projected and actual use for the constitutionals, because we are expecting you guys to give us money back. So it is in our best interest to watch that side of the house and not just to say, the constitutionals ask and we giveth, right? So that's a request for staff. And obviously, I hate to give you guys more work, but I think it will provide us with a lot more clarity. And I'm sure as we get better at this, there'll be an easier way to do it. Right? There'll be an easier way to do it. And those that are interested, can look at it, and those that are not, don't have to. But those are my two additions to this. Thank you very much. It's always great to see you.
Same.
All right. Are we done? You're done? All right. So now that we've done the presentations, if we can, does anyone have any questions, any comments? All minds and hearts are clear? All right. We'll move on to the setting of the agenda. Mr. Attorney, I know we have we have an add-on and we have several deferral requests. If we can go through that quickly.
Madam Chair, I believe the addition was 2E,
Yes.
and 1G2, the deferral was requested to no date certain, and that was a correction from the changes memo.
Is there any other deferral request?
Madam Chair, I pulled item 2B precisely for deferral. I don't know if you want to take that up now or you.
You can take it up now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so item 2B is a external audit of our payroll system. And this is an item that I brought forward about 2 years ago. It came before this committee a few months ago. I want to say in March, we had a full presentation from the administration. I was very satisfied with those findings. Still felt it in my heart that we should have an external audit, but I don't want to do the same thing as the clerk is doing. And so I partnered up with the clerk, and together we're going to be doing an external audit of the payroll system. And so for that reason, there's really no reason for us to spend unnecessary money at this time. So I'd like to defer item 2B until no time certain.
Second.
All right. Well, we'll put it all together. All right. So that's we'll add that one as a deferral request. Anyone pulling anything? Go through the poll real quick so we can do it all at once. Yes.
I have an amendment to 1G1 at the appropriate time. I have questions on 2C, 3C, and 3Q.
Okay. 2C, 3C. Q. Okay,
Madam
Anyone
Chair,
else? Yes.
I'd like to pool or bifurcate 3Q.
okay. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, 3A.
3A. Okay. Anything else? All
Madam
right.
Chair?
I am going to,
Madam Chair,
yes,
can we just get clarification from Commissioner Gonzalez as to when he would like the deferral to be?
Until no time certain.
Noted certain? Thank you.
okay. I'm gonna pull 3I, and 3K, 3N, 3O. All right, you got all those? You wanna double check?
Want me to go over the list,
Yeah,
Madam Chair?
just read them over once so we're on the same page.
I have the items that have been pulled, 2C, 3A, 3C, 3I, 3K, 3N, 3O, and 3Q.
Okay, perfect. So I think Gonzalez had an, motion to move the agenda with the deferrals requested.
So move, Madam Chair.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Perfect. All right, Mr. Attorney?
Like, begin with the public hearing items then?
Yes, please.
Item 1G1 is an ordinance related to annual independent financial audits and oversight of county boards and the offices that provide administrative support to such boards, creating Section 2-11.39.4 of the Code of Miami-Dade County, Florida, delegating to the chairperson of the board and the county mayor or county mayor's designee the authority to require annual independent financial audits of such county boards and offices, delegating to the county mayor or county mayor's designee the authority to place certain offices on management watch, requiring reports, providing severability, inclusion in the code, and an effective date. Item 1G2 was deferred to no date certain with the setting of the agenda. Item 1G3 is an ordinance related to the West Bryan Community Redevelopment Agency, amending Section 2-2460 of the Code of Miami-Dade County, Florida, authorizing the agency to employ agency staff, agents, and other employees as the agency may require, and legal counsel and legal staff in accordance with Section 163.356 Florida statutes, providing severability and inclusion in the code and an effective date. These are public hearing items.
Thank you. All right. So with that, we'll open the reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard on these public hearing items. If you have, if you want to speak on them, please come on down. Going once, going twice. Your name and address for the record.
Good evening
Thank you.
again, Kenneth Brown, 12300 Northwest 17th Avenue. Madam Chair, I was just speaking on the items. A lot of these items here that I see that funding was actually granted to 79th Street corridor, and also money was granted to Camilla House, which the Camilla House was a great thing. I think that was a good idea for him to continue to give money to the Camilla House. But the 79th Street Causeway, that project has not yet began. But when that project do begin, can you or the commissioners that's in that area, can they include the community, like Model City and a lot of the other members that's in the community to be involved so they can be recognized? Because what happened, what we're doing now in the community, a lot of things that's going on in the community has not been notified. They're actually just coming in and doing it. By the time the community find out what's going on, it's overwhelmed and it's too late. And also, it's a lot of homes that's in the area, the inner city area, that's in badly need of shape, and there need to be repairs to be done. And I have came down numerous times to mention this and bring this forward to the attention of a lot of people at the PACD, and that was never taken care of. And again, back to the problem to where you have a lot of homeless young ladies. I just met a young lady last night that was 17 years old. She has 2 children, and she's sleeping in her car. I mean, a lot of these issues has not been taken care of. Even the 13 women that I brought down here a few months ago, only 2 of those women actually got placed in a place. The rest of them still is homeless. So a lot of these issues that I appreciate your time and your effort and all the things that you guys are doing. So if you can look into that, I really appreciate it. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no one else, we will close a reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard. Mr. Attorney? Does anyone want to speak on 1G1? All
Madam
right.
Chair, I believe Commissioner Cohen-Higgins had indicated she had an amendment on item 1G1. Would you like for us to read it?
I do.
Commissioner Cohen-Higgins moves to amend item 1G1 to provide that completion of the audits required by the ordinance are not subject to the discretion of the chairperson of the board or the county mayor or county mayor's designee.
Thank you. Before we get into the amendment, I just have some questions. Number one, what is the funding source? Because it's not unclear, it's unclear. And then it doesn't specify which boards. Are we auditing like the Commission on Women? Like who are we auditing? Are we auditing everyone?
Is that to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know what you mean when you say what's the funding source. These are our boards that are handling tax dollars. This is all of the boards that are handling dollars of any kind. They're going to be subject to an annual audit.
But what's the line item? Who's doing the audit, and what's the cost associated with it? What's the funding source in the budget for the?
Each of the boards can determine who they want to do the outside independent audit. We're not specifying to them who they have to hire to do the audit.
But are we setting a price point? I mean, we're going to pay for that, right? So we give them money. They're now going to have an extra expense. Some of them, like, just buy coffee. Some of them do more than that. So even the ones that just buy coffee they're going to have to go get an independent audit, and then we're going to have to pay for that. What is the fiscal impact of that, and what are the caps?
Yeah, this item is not geared toward boards that buy coffee. Some of our boards in Miami-Dade County manage a large sum of money.
Agree, and that's why we would
And
say,
so-
that's why, but it says all
Currently,
boards.
under our statute, yeah, it does say all boards. I'm happy to amend it if you want to create some sort of a threshold that says you're not subject to a financial audit if your financial intake is, I don't know, pick whatever dollar amount you would like. This is certainly not geared towards those boards that are buying coffee.
David, come on down and talk to us about board budgets. We've had this conversation before. All right, David, if you could provide us some guidance on board budgets. Obviously, when you read this item, you're thinking of the homeless trust and you're thinking of other things that are much bigger. But within the ecosystem of boards, there are actually more boards that have less money than there are boards that have more. So if you could just give us kind of, from a budgetary perspective, some tranches, that would be helpful for this item.
David Clodfelter, Office of Management and Budget. So boards that you just mentioned, they are already required to do an audit, and the funding sources for those boards will pay for the audit. MD, Homeless Trust, give some examples. Were there anything specific?
Well, which ones, like, what are the threshold and which ones already have audits? Clearly, it appears that we're concerned about the ones that don't have the audits. But there are some boards that I don't think they make, I mean, they don't receive enough funding to merit an audit. Like, the audit would be their most expensive line item.
Right, if it's a board that is funded in the general government, general fund, then it's all part of the general fund audit. So it may not, the threshold, I would have to look at if there is a threshold and what that is, but it depends on how the office and/or board was structured that basically requires that audit and the way that, in the ordinance that it was developed.
Colleagues, I would say that we need more information on this. I mean, if we could have a list of the boards that are required to have audits, right? And how much money they receive, and then the ones that you would like to audit. I mean, I understand your point that it would come out of their general fund, but how much are they going to spend and how much more would we have to add to that pot in order to have them all do financial audits? I'm all for auditing. I'm just saying this, the auditing from a third party comes at a cost to the county at a moment where we're talking about how we don't.
Right.
Right.
But if it is part of the general fund, it technically is already funded because the clerk is making that part of their much larger audit for the general fund. These other boards. and
Right, but the ones that already have to, so we said, for example, you mentioned the homeless trust,
Right.
already has an audit, already has funding for an audit. Not worried about them. But this encompasses all boards. So I would like to know how many more boards that is and how many more audits that would be. That's really my question.
Madam Chair,
We'll
may
work
I-
with the clerk to put something together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would add, as someone who's familiar with advisory boards, I like the intent of the item. I think it's good, and I like where it's going. I agree with it. I think we should divide into, there's boards that just have trust funds that fundraise basically, and don't expend from county budgets. So I think giving that distinction would help to see who would need to do an audit and who wouldn't. That I would suggest that.
So that would be my request as an amendment if you're open to it. I just, I don't think we should do something this broad without more specificity. And obviously, we want to know how much money is in that account for the audits and how much of that. I would assume that the money that is in that account for auditing is for the boards that are required auditing. So now if we're adding more boards, then we would have to figure out where the money would be. And then I think we should also have an idea of what we're gonna allow them to price out for external auditing too, right? So those are all things that if you would consider adding to the item, it would make me feel better in supporting it. I agree with Commissioner Orbis. I think it comes from a good place. I just think it needs a lot more specificity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to add a list of the boards. We contemplated doing that in drafting the item, and we did not do that intentionally. But if it's the will of the board to list out specific boards that would be required to have an annual external audit, I'm happy to make that amendment. The list is not that long.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, Madam Chair, so, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Orbis and with the chair. I think this is a great item. I think the more that we can look into every single board that is spending money, the better, right? I think that the chairwoman made a great point. I think the only way that we're going to get through this hard time is by being transparent and by looking at line items, right? And so my question to Mr. Clodfelter, because, sir, you mentioned that there are boards that already have an auditing mechanism, like a funding mechanism built in for auditing. But you don't know what those boards are?
No, absolutely we do. I gave you some examples. MDED is one.
Okay.
And due to the complexity of their way that they were structured, it requires that they must do an audit. They work with the comptroller to finalize that, and that is required.
Got it.
For them.
And so are there any boards that spend money that do not have a mechanism like that?
No. Even if it's part of, like I mentioned, the general fund, that is inside of the general fund's audit, external audit.
So just to be clear, because I want to make sure I'm following you, right? So just to be clear, if a board spends money, because I think Commissioner Orbis made an amazing point, there are some boards that, you know, all they do is hold money or raise money, right? So if a board spends money, they already have a funding mechanism built inside?
If a board has a budget to expense, it is accounted for in one of our major funds and budgeted for. Either included in the external audit that the comptroller puts together and or works with these separate organizations such as MDED, I gave you an example, to complete the audit and also put that together in a final document. So it is funded because it's budgeted.
Okay, awesome, because I think that, you know, I think that was the chairwoman's point. Am I wrong, Chairwoman?
No, yeah, I mean, I just think, I mean, I can think of the Parks Foundation, the Asian American, I can think of all these different boards, right? And yes, some of them may have like a small expenditure for an event that they're fundraising for, but they don't have expenditures in the same way that we would think of expenditures.
Correct.
And then, right, so, but the ones that are required, so I guess my question, and this would be to the, what is the difference between like the list of the ones that are required to have it and the ones that would be included? Because this item appears to be adding the requirement of auditing to boards. What is the universe of that that is not already required to have that?
Madam Chairwoman,
Yeah.
if I may, I'm just going to throw this out there, but I think the intent, and I don't want to speak for the commissioner, but I think the intent was, as rightfully stated by the chairwoman, boards that are spending money. We want to know line item by line item how much money you're spending, where this money's going, and why, right? And so I would respectfully suggest, obviously with consideration of my colleagues, if perhaps there could be an amendment, if we already know the boards that spend money, because you said this on the record, sir, perhaps we can just add an amendment that limits it to those boards that spend money, which, as Mr. Clodfelter has stated, already have a funding mechanism, because I think that's something brilliant that the chairwoman brought up. We do, if we don't have money to do this, we shouldn't do it. But if the money's already built in, we already know the boards that are spending money, then maybe perhaps we can add an amendment that just says, hey, if a board is spending money, or this is the list of those boards, they have the money to do the audit, those are the ones that are pertinent to this item.
No,
I don't know if that solves the issue.
I agree with you, but he's saying that they're already doing it. So my question is, who is not doing it? Because he's saying that the reason that line item exists in our budget is because they're required to do the audit. They're already doing the audit. So that's why my question is, what other boards are not included in the universe that David is speaking to that this item speaks to? Because what we're saying is, if they're spending money, the county requires them to do an audit, and the county gives them the money to do the audit. So who is outside of that universe that this item is speaking to and adding to that universe?
I think we can put a list of these, all of the boards together, and we'll put what's already included in the external audit that the comptroller does, and et cetera, and break that out. And that's a better, we can provide that.
That would be useful.
Okay.
All right. So you're amenable to that? Yeah. All right. Okay. If we can include that then as an amendment, I don't know how you're going to do that.
Yeah, that's sounds complicated.
Best of luck. I guess you could say that we're going to add an exhibit that David is going to provide that's going to determine the universe of boards that are already required to do this under county code, and specifically call out those that are not required to do it.
Yes.
I don't know how we're going to carve out the ones that don't have money, but I guess you can put them in the exhibit too.
And Madam Chair, and it would, the item would then only be applicable to those that have the funding source and expend money. Is that
That are
correct?
not already doing it. So.
Or not already doing it, right?
Right, so what David is saying, there's a universe that already are required to have an external audit, and they have the funding to do it. So they're already, that's already happening. So what we want to know is, who else are we bringing into that universe with this item?
And perhaps, I'm sorry, and perhaps the ones that are already doing it, we should probably get a copy of all of those. I mean, at least I would like a copy.
Absolutely. We'll talk to the clerk, and it could even be maybe shown a different way. We can ask the clerk if they can break it out a different way to satisfy this item.
Okay. Yes, by all means.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to my colleagues, I appreciate the conversation. I am happy to make the amendments to add additional clarity, and in those amendments, it will highlight which boards are required to do it, because all entities that collect tax dollars of any kind are required to be subject to an internal audit by Miami-Dade County that is fixed, that has been in place forever. What is not required by all of these boards that are collecting large sums of money are outside independent external audits. That's what this item speaks to.
Right, which
So
is
I
why I
just wanna
asked you
be-
about the
I just want to
funding.
be clear.
Right. That's why I asked you about the funding. See, that's where we got a little confused, because I asked about the funding source for this, and you said that it was included in the general fund. But the general fund line, well, that's what David said. The general fund line item is for the internal audit that is done by the comptroller, who is the clerk, who is a constitutional officer. So does the audit that's done by the clerk, the constitutional officer, satisfy your request for an external audit? Or are you asking for a separate external audit? And if so, who's paying for that? Where's that money coming from? And what are the caps? That's why my first question was the financing.
So I'll use the Children's Trust as an example. We had a previous ordinance in Miami-Dade County that spoke to an outside independent external audit, and there was some uncertain language in there, which is what prompted this item. But the Children's Trust I'll use as an example because every year they would engage an outside independent external auditor to audit their books and provide a report to the board that is comprehensive, it's beautiful, it showcases all of the good work that they do, but not all boards were uniformly complying with that ordinance. This speaks to that, and in the amendment, we will make those amendments and those clarifications. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That would be useful. And again, where's the financing, right? Where is it going to come from? I think is something that's important as it goes to the full board. I think there needs to be clarity on that. All right. So a motion on this?
Before you vote,
Yes.
Madam Chair and Vice Chair, so we just needed some clarity as to what your proposed amendments. There were a lot of discussion, but right now, the ordinance, and I think what your concern is about other boards. You didn't talk about what boards fall under the community advocacy, which is under the chairperson's purview. But under the other boards, right now it says, notwithstanding any provision of the code or law to the contrary, the county mayor or the county mayor's designee and we're going to strike the words at their sole discretion, that was the amendment, shall require annual independent financial audits of those boards with oversight, and we can add the word, and expenditure authority of county funds or other funds, including federal and local funds allocated or awarded to the county, et cetera, et cetera. Would that be helpful for the board to add the word and expenditure authority? And I believe you wanted to also have the item amended to include an exhibit that lists the boards that that are the subject matter of this ordinance. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we need to know who is paying for external audits and who is not. Because David was speaking to the internal audits that are required and done by the comptroller and the clerk, and the line item associated with that. But now we're adding to that. So that we're going to say these are the folks that have those audits, right? And this is their line item. But in addition, there's how many of these have external third party, right? Because I think that will answer the question. So we have the comptroller one by the constitutional clerk, and then we'll see who's doing the other piece, and then we'll figure out the funding. Thank you. If you're good with it.
Yes, I move my item as amended. Thank you.
All right. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Gonzalez. Commissioner Milian Orbis.
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Corn Higgins.
4.
Chairwoman Regalado.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Attorney, 1G2.
1G2 is deferred, Madam
Right,
Chair.
sorry.
1G3. Title's read already.
Yes. Anyone have any issues on 1G3? Seeing none, I can have a motion.
So
Let's
moved.
see if I have a question.
I'm happy to second the motion. I believe that the sponsor is here. Thank you for joining us. On 1G3, are there any qualifications required for the outside legal counsel that will be retained for this CRA? Or is it entirely discretionary to the board meaning that CRA?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for that question. The simple requirement is to make sure that the person who's going to satisfy this position is also a Florida Bar attorney. So at the floor, the person must be an attorney. Number two, as we see with other CRAs across this county, they vote on their particular representation, so that should be left with that board.
Does that satisfy your questions? All right, so we have a motion. Are you seconding that? Or? Yeah, I'm happy to second it. Okay, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Milian Orbis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
4.
Vice Chairwoman Corn Higgins,
4.
Chairwoman Regalado.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, now we'll go to the poll list. Mr. Attorney?
Your next item is 2C.
Commissioner, would you like to present your item, or you just want to take the questions?
I'll take the questions.
All right. Commissioner Cohen Higgins, you pulled the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pulled 2C, and I appreciate the sponsoring commissioner being with us. Welcome. I'm just interested in what the balance of the Overtown Trust Fund is, should this item pass, and the $900,000 be allocated to Kamal Hospitality Group. What balance does that leave in the trust fund?
Good afternoon. Vivian Cao, Office of Management and Budget. Today, the balance of the trust fund is $5.7 million.
That's inclusive of the 900, or that's
No.
after the 900?
Before the 900.
All right. Do you want to say anything, Commissioner, or are you good?
You know, I would hope that everyone supports this item. So we do know how this trust fund was developed. It's developed because this area, the Southeast Overtown Parkway CRA, has been an area that's been plagued with crime, homelessness, slum, blight. It's been I would dare to say the thorn in the side of Miami-Dade County, even though it's just a walking distance from here. And so we've made tremendous progress over my time in the Miami CRA when I was a chairperson there for the entire time that I was the city commissioner to the time now. So I'm literally working on both sides of the coin to make improvements in this space. Particularly, what we're trying to do is ensure that Overtown continues to be a destination for people to visit, where there's opportunities for employment, opportunities for fine dining, opportunities for casual dining, opportunities for entertainment. And this is part and parcel how we get that done. This particular group is and has been in Overtown for quite some time. And in the CRA, there are opportunities for instance, the Miami World Center item. There are opportunities for, when I was a city commissioner, we negotiated with Miami World Center that when we gave the TIF offering, we had opportunities for our local businesses to enter into the World Center site. So now what you'll find is that it's not just a place where you have Maple and Ash, which is a wonderful restaurant. If you haven't been there, please go by there. Not just I think it's the Casa something, I can't think of the name of the other one. There's another one that just opened up, and you have other national brands like Fenty Beauty and all of these other places. We also have local businesses present and competing in the space. So we're literally introducing fine quality foods from our constituents in spaces where they typically would not be able to afford to be there. And so the Overtown CRA makes it happen, and this trust fund also makes it happen. And I appreciate everyone for giving this some consideration and improving this matter as we move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cohen Higgins, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardiman, for that explanation. The $900,000, is there not a competitive process for the Overtown Trust Fund? Is it allocated, and has it historically been allocated based on items similar to this, where the board just says, you, entity A, B, or C, receives X amount of dollars? There's no procurement or open solicitation process for others to participate?
Historically, there has not been. Historically, when I was a city commissioner, this trust fund, when it was managed by my predecessor, it did not, and it still continues not to be. One of the caveats to me not wanting to sit on the board in the city of Miami was the fact that we had this that we could still use. Not only could we ask our colleagues in the city of Miami to help us, but there was also some dollars that we could make sure that went into particular things in order for us to ensure that the development that we want to see happen in Overtown happens in a particular fashion. And even still, just like on this board, in the municipality, you have procurement processes that allow for you not to competitively bid something, especially where people already have leases in certain spaces, where they own certain properties, where no one could compete with them because they're already in ownership, or they're already in some sort of agreement where that thing is theirs. And so this is particularly one of those things. This group already has these particular parcels of property that need to be improved, or restaurants that are coming on board, or leases to particular spaces, and they need assistance into making it a reality.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, any other questions? Can we have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? All right. I will say something really quick. There are several items that have to do with the CRA, and I'll mention it now because Overtown is the only one that has made a tremendous investment in transportation. One of the things that we're going to take up here is our transit cliff. We were talking about our constitutional officer problem, but we've known about our transit cliff for a long time too. And a while back, this board passed an item that required a contribution from CRAs. So it really is a question about a TIF over a TIF, and I won't bore you with that. But I will say that the Overtown CRA made an enormous contribution to SFRTA and Miami Central Station, above and beyond the 20% that this board now requires to the CRA. And to staff, we actually talked about this yesterday when we were going through the budget. We would like some information, whether you bring it here or to transit, on those TIFs and the capturing of that. Like, what is the accountability on the CRA's participation? Those CRAs that are captured within that item, how are they participating, and how are we ensuring that they're giving their piece to transit as requested by this board? And I say that because Commissioner Hardiman was very eloquently speaking about the community benefits that were negotiated with Miami World Center that went to this trust. And one of the issues that we have, not just here at the county, but also at cities, including the city of Miami, is accountability for those promises when they're made, right? So we make them, we pass the item. There normally is not a mechanism to ensure that those promises are kept. And in the case of the CRAs and their newly created transit requirement for contribution, my understanding is there also isn't a mechanism. So I think that's one of the things that we have to consider as we move forward, right? What is the mechanism that's going to ensure, and at what point of the fiscal year are we going to ask for that funding, or see if they're providing some proof that that contribution was made in some other way? So something to consider as we move forward with the budget. All right, Mr. Attorney, next item.
Next item is 3A.
That's my item, Madam Chair.
Yes, you pulled it.
And so,
Madam
colleagues,
Chair,
Yes?
for 2C, I don't believe there was a vote.
Yeah, we did. We voted, and it was unanimous.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I rarely forget a vote. All right, next item. Commissioner Gonzalez, by all means.
thank you, Madam Chair. And, to my colleagues, so this item is, the only reason I pulled it is because it's very time sensitive. So what this item does is there's a long standing practice in Miami-Dade County. There are a lot of great folks that work in Miami-Dade County that also serve our incredible and amazing military that makes sure that we are, we can ensure our freedoms. And so the issue with that is that there are times where there are folks that they'll work in Miami-Dade County, let's say they're making $20 an hour, but when they get called into active duty and they have to go and fight for this country, if they're making less, then sometimes they're in positions where they can lose their homes because they're depending on their paychecks. So what Miami-Dade County has done is that there is a program that allows for these great folks to actually be able to get that difference from the county. This has been a longstanding practice, but unfortunately, it expired November of last year. So we've had some folks that are actively in the military that are possibly not being able to pay their bills. And so I ask that we move this item, but I also ask at the pleasure of the chair if we can please also include to have this item go before the next county commission meeting, which I believe is on May 20th, so that we can make sure that these folks are taken care of as soon as possible.
Thank you. And I appreciate your item. When I met with staff about it, I was perplexed that you have to do this every year. I just don't understand why we have to do this every year. It's bizarre, right? I mean, so if you know that you have certain number of employees and you know which ones are reservists, like wouldn't you have a line item in the budget that speaks to that based on last year's utility, right? Like, I don't know why I guess my question is, how many people are we talking about and why do we have to bring an item every year?
And how could we miss something as important as this?
Right. I just feel like it happens every year, right?
Unacceptable.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
the item Melanie may not have the exact number. The item was asked to be put on this agenda, and to the commissioner's point, we would like to move it expeditiously. Our deputy director of PIOD, Melanie, can speak to the numbers of people who have been impacted.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson, Board. I don't have the exact number. I can tell you, though, that over the last couple of fiscal years, last fiscal year, we spent about $293,000 on this program. It is a very good program because, as Commissioner Gonzalez so eloquently said, it helps to support our employees who are deployed, and this is actually for people who are in active duty. So these are people who are actually maybe on the front lines fighting for our freedom. We 100% agree, and we're very grateful to Commissioner Gonzalez for bringing the item. I just don't understand it. This is something that happens every year. When you present the budget, why can't you have a line item based on the expenditure from last year and just have it happen automatically? And then during the mid-year, if you need to adjust it, we adjust it. Like, why do we have to bring an item? Why does he have to bring an item every year?
And Madam Chair, if I may, part of this resolution would make this indefinitely, so we don't have to come back every year. But I agree with you. We shouldn't have to do that, right? We should be able to just allocate that this needs to be done every year and do it. But I will say that with the passing of this item, it will be indefinitely.
Yeah, I noticed that. I don't understand why we needed the item to begin with.
So originally, when this item was promulgated back in 2001, this was after the Iraq War, it was written such that it was every 2 years, and every 2 years thereafter, we would come back to the board because, as you know, circumstances may change. So we have been doing this, coming back to the board on a regular basis every 2 years, and to Commissioner Gonzalez's point, this resolution will make it indefinite because you make a very good point, Commissioner Regalado, that it is something that should be in perpetuity. So we are making that correction or adjustment to ensure that we don't no longer have to come before the board with this item.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any other questions?
Happy to second the motion.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right. Mr. Attorney, next item.
3C.
Madam Chair, I pull this item just to vote no.
All right.
I'll move it, Madam Chair.
I'm confused. So you pulled the item to vote no, but it's your item? You said 3C, right? Did I miss something?
That's exactly right. It's a budget that has to come before the board. I'm not in agreement with the expenditures in the budget, which is why I'm voting no.
Madam Chair?
Yes. By all means.
Commissioners, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair,
the floor, sir.
thank you so much. Madam Chair, I've had an opportunity to review the item, review the budget for this CRA. I'm in full support of it, covers both of our areas, and they need this budget approved so they can continuously move and deal with the slum and blight that's found within the Rancho CRA area. So I would ask that everyone supports it. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about 3C? All right, seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against? Yeah. Yeah. No, all right, she's a no. We're voting now, in real time. All right. Okay.
Commissioner Cohen-Higgins is a no on 3C. Thank you.
All right, next item, Mr. Attorney.
3I.
So 3I, I actually pulled it. I spoke to Nathan about it, but I just wanted to flag it for you all. It's a simple item that's a continuation of the budget. What staff, thank you, Nathan. What Nathan was telling me is that they have an RFP out and that they believe that 1 year is sufficient time. I bring it up because we haven't talked about housing yet, and we're going to be talking about housing soon. But I know that some of you are going to DC, so I wanted to take the opportunity to flag this. We have a serious issue with our Section 8 vouchers. So if Nathan, could you speak to that really quick before the field trip?
Yes, absolutely.
Give you the opportunity to advocate.
Thank you very much. Nathan Kogan, Housing and Community Development. So yes, our Section 8 program, which is also known as Housing Choice Vouchers, are the vouchers that go to recipients for the assistance of rental payments. We have approximately 19,000 families or households on Housing Choice Vouchers. We are fully funded for this program by federal dollars from HUD. We are recognizing that there's a shortfall this year in funding. This is a national occurrence. This is an unprecedented national occurrence. Approximately $3.7 billion nationally that we have a shortfall for this fiscal year. Under the president's proposed budget, which he released, there's an additional $26 billion of cuts to HUD that would go towards Section 8 vouchers. So from an advocacy point of view, yes, for this fiscal year, we are working with the shortfall team from HUD. Shortfalls are not uncommon, and usually they get funded. However, again, because it's unprecedented, so we do need those dollars that can be appropriated through the Senate and the House. There are bills that are going through now. And then for the next fiscal year, it's important that the Section 8 be intact to the greatest extent possible. It not only supports the residents, it also supports landlords who are reliant on those benefits as well. So yes, this is an important topic for us. We're going to be discussing this further. We've been in close discussions with the mayor's office and preparing ourselves. We're going to know more in the next couple months of where we stand with this national shortfall.
Thank you. Colleagues, what I would say is when we reopened the voucher program, they almost broke the system. How many people applied? There really is a tremendous demand, and it's a use it or lose it system. The only thing that I would ask Nathan and for staff is maybe it's a good idea to provide the board with some information as to where this housing is. I think it would be important for folks to see the zip code and the commission districts that are impacted, because as you said, Nathan, it's not just a displacement of the renters that are using this to pay the rent, but also an issue with the landlords and those areas, because there are concentrations throughout Miami-Dade County, and it would probably be a good idea for those directly impacted. I think we should all advocate for it. I think it's a very important and essential program that has been at the center of HUD for a very long time. But the other thing that I think we should consider is we do have a lot of funding that we receive for home purchasing that is not being used. So I think at some point, we need to consider what our options are for that funding. Thank you, Nathan. All right, and with that, I'll move the item. Nathan says that 1 year is enough. So thank you for this second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Attorney, next.
3K?
I pulled 3K. This is a police item. There's several of them. Just like I said earlier when we were talking about the presentations to staff, I think there needs to be in these items a correlation to the budget. We are doing their ITD, but it needs to be connected to a line item. If not, we're just approving things in the dark here. You know, it's one thing for us to do it for our own budget because we have a mastery of it. It's another thing in terms of the constitutionals. So I think that it's important to have that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
When you made the suggestion earlier, I was nodding vigorously with an amen. I think is a good business practice for us to connect these items to where they're funded in the budget, particularly when something is funded previous years and it's carried over and we don't have line of sight of that because it took time to get to a particular procurement or pool. So we're absolutely taking that back, and we'll try to incorporate that in the standard memo and agreements that we bring before this board. It's an excellent idea. Thank you for that.
Thank you. All right. So I'll move the item. Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, next one, 3N.
Brian?
This was me too, huh? So 3N, this actually covers a lot of things. But one of the things that I wanted to point out, because I'm sure all of you have gotten the complaints that I get, I know we've talked about it. If you'll look, this is for ground maintenance. I mean, we're talking about maintenance of transit stations, ISD properties, but the roadside mowing and the ground maintenance for roadsides, I don't know how many of you have gotten these complaints, but I could write a book as to the timing of them. Have you gotten these, right? So yes, and I've spoken to the departments about this before. In this item, we're approving, $874,900, and then a little bit over $2 million. There's the roadway ones, like the parks and the facilities. Got it. But the roadways, can we please work on the timing of it? Just the roadway trimming at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 5 p.m. is just a horrible idea. So, yeah.
Through the chair, are you complaining about the noise or the frequency?
No, the interruption of the lanes.
The traffic.
Yeah, the traffic.
Okay,
Right.
I'm sorry,
And I know that Maria and I have spoken about this in the past. It really is about the contractor. So, Maria, could you speak to it and see what's going on over there with the contractors?
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll look into it and we'll make sure that it's best coordinated. So there's no very minimal interruption.
Please,
Will do.
please. I mean, it breaks their heart when they close a lane to trim a tree in the middle of a traffic jam. So thank you. All right, with that, yes?
Madam Chair, I mean, I think that's a
Commissioner
good
Gonzalez.
point. I think that's a good point. And would it be helpful to try to come up with and I don't know if we could do it with this particular item, but would it be helpful to come up with restrictions? I'm not I have a lot of HOAs in my district, as do you, right? And there's great HOAs, and then there's really bad ones, right? But some of the good ones, they have restrictions as to when you can
Right.
make that noise?
So it really is about the contracting. So obviously, if you contract at earlier and later times, there's a price issue. They want to do it during the day. But the problem is that at the time they want to do it is at the worst possible time for us, because that's when people are on the road. So if you're trimming trees and clipping plants between 9 and 6, that's when people are using the roadways. So I hate to sound like FDOT and say that everything should be done at the crack of dawn, you know?
To your point, it could cause an accident too.
It can, and it causes disruption, and they close a lane. So I know that we've been talking about the contracts. It really is. Please don't make us bring an ordinance. I mean, we could. I'm happy to draft one, but I would really just common sense in contracting would be phenomenal. And I know that they don't want to do it. Maria, we've talked about this. Like, there's a price issue, and obviously they can't trim the trees in the dark, right, Jimmy? You're going to tell me they can't do it in the dark?
There are other factors.
And the noise ordinance.
In the morning, so, you know, because if you work in neighborhoods and it's 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning, there's no traffic, but there's the neighbors who don't want the noise. Same thing at night. Plus, you don't want people working at night with equipment like that and whatnot. So it's a challenge
Right.
to get all the roads done within a time frame.
We'll have to talk to Commissioner Steinberg, you know, but I am happy to have them work at, I get up at 5:30. I am happy to have them do it early in the morning. I think that our residents would prefer that to a 9 a.m. lane closure. Just because of the chaos, but we'll talk about it.
Let us take a look and see if we can come up.
Please, don't make me draft an item. I appreciate it. With that, I'll move the item. Can I have a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Mr. Attorney, folks are starting to get hangry.
3-0.
This one, I just wanted to flag it for you all because the county is again doing the work for the constitutionals. This in particular has the price point for the police, the sheriff rebranding. So I know that this has come up. We talked about it a few years ago when we were talking about the constitutionals. But this is the item that actually has the cost associated with that. So again, to my point about, you know, that's a new expense that is hopefully a one-time thing. But I'm happy to move the item. I just want staff to tie it to, if we could just be tying it to the budget, that would be great. I'll move it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, now we have 3Q. Commissioner Orbis pulled it.
Yes. Thank you, Milian Orbis.
Yes.
So I just have some questions for the administration on this one.
He's coming.
Okay.
Good afternoon, committee members. Phil Edwards, DTPW, Chief Intergovernmental Affairs.
Hi, good afternoon. So who will be managing this program?
So the department will manage this program. Our Chief over Goods and Services Procurement will work with our bus and rail divisions to administer this mobility sourcing program.
And who monitors which parts are or are determined to be sole source or proprietary, and which ones are not?
So the department has evaluated its needs, and so we maintain over 100 miles of rail. We have a bus fleet of 750 buses, and so what this does is it creates a mechanism to promote operational reliability, because we're able to directly negotiate and contract with the single source proprietary vendors to acquire those goods and services faster so we can maintain the system and keep it safe.
Okay. Has a program like this ever been done at the county?
Yes, there's precedent. So the Water and Sewer Department has an injection wells program that I believe is valued at up to 120 million, and it's the same scheme.
Okay. All right, thank you. I mean, I have maybe more questions, but thank you. Yeah, so my concern with this is that recently we had a report from the OIG of a bribery scheme that occurred with a DTPW employee. And I know that through this item, they're going to be collaborating with the OIG to provide oversight and accountability. But, what safeguards are being put in place to make sure that that doesn't occur?
Right. So one, I don't want us to conflate that issue with the OIG with the merits of this program, which will allow us to get what we need faster for maintenance of the system. In terms of transparency, any contract executed under this finite pool will have to come back to this body, to the county commission, for ratification. In addition to that, we have to provide reports on an annual basis, and the contracts executed under the program will be posted on the website as well, which is the same formula followed by the Water and Sewer Department that has had a similar pool since, I think, 2018.
Okay. Well, I would say to my colleagues that I'm hesitant to award and designate this $130 million contract that spans over 5 years. So I would propose that we allocate $25 million for a year, and then we have the administration report back and provide comparisons between how it was and how it's going now, and the time that it takes versus what time is saved through this proposition.
So, don't disagree with you. However, I will say this. I have a few concerns with it, a little bit different. To the commissioner's point, there was recently an incident, right? So we're not, as we would say in Spanish, no podemos tapar eso con un dedo, right? We got to deal with it. And the question is, staff that is at the decision-making level, right? We need to know who that staff is, and we need to have a background check, and we need information on that. And I think that that is fair, given what just occurred, right? So it's fantastic that other people are involved, but I think at the center of the concern is that the decision makers are now staff, and there is an opportunity there for something to go amiss, as it did in the case that she just mentioned that we won't get into. That's number one. Number two, as I mentioned yesterday in our transit committee, I've been looking at different Metro Mover options. So the price tag for the maintenance of the Metro Mover is pretty high. And for the amount of money that we will be, quote unquote, fixing the Metro Mover system, we can actually replace it with something else that is more dynamic. And I think will actually provide us with two forms of service, a free one and then one that we can charge. So my concern with this is just, I don't want to approve the Metro Mover maintenance, because I think we have an opportunity here to do something different, and to really change how the Metro Mover works. And I know that the director has met with the folks that I've met with, and there's different modalities as to what can be done with the Metro Mover. But to my colleagues, pretty much the idea is, in the space where the Metro Mover resides, to put a modality that is not as large and as cumbersome and can actually go in different ways. And you can have one that stops at every station, and you can have one that goes to a particular station at a price point. So you'll have a free one that stops every time, and then you'll have a more dynamic one that you pay for that is just for you and whoever's with you, and they go straight, and you go straight to your station, right? And I think that there's different ways to do it. I've looked at 2 different companies that can do it. And as we move forward, specifically with the Metro Mover, I think, we shouldn't throw good money after bad. I think there's an opportunity right now to get a different system that does not have the high maintenance requirements of this one that we have. So that's my only concern. I'm happy to support your amendment. I think it's an opportunity. I don't know if the 25 works for them. I think we got to figure out what was their price point for the first year that they were looking at. I think it's fair to say you will do it for 1 year and then you come back to us. I would add some information on the decision makers and a background check, because I think lesson learned, right? First time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. And then on the Metro Mover, Jimmy, is there a opportunity to put a pin in it and figure out what we can do?
On that point, we are looking at potential options. We're having challenges. Obviously, this is an example. This is the company that built that system out, and this goes to why we're asking for this. It's proprietary, and so we can't just call another company and say, "Can you come fix our Metro Mover?" Right?
No, but I'm saying take the whole thing out. Sell
No,
it
I
for
understand.
scraps and do
We
something
are
different.
looking at options like that. So
Right.
I don't have an answer as to where we're going to go with it. It could even be a rubberized, a rubber tire option. We've gotten some proposals. We're looking at that kind of stuff. But I do want to address this is not what happened in what came out from the OIG about somebody who was using emergency contracts as a way to try to get work done. Here we have either buses, trains, systems that are proprietary. We have to buy parts and also servicing, and there really is no competition. Or if there's, but we still have to go through a procurement process that causes an extra time to take, and therefore slower to fix the stuff. So what we're trying to do here in this mobility plan is to say, for the next 5 years, to enable us with these legacy contracts to have an expedited procurement process. They still have to come back here. Those contracts are then going to still have to come back to the commission for ratification. So we're not talking for approval. We're not trying to take the commission out of it. We're just trying to get to you more quickly, because we recognize that we're talking here about sole providers of either the spare parts, the maintenance of the equipment, that kind of stuff. There is no competitive market for them.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But so I just want to understand it, because I think to the chair's point and to Commissioner Orbis's point, I don't think there's anything wrong with checks and balances, and so we're talking about how much money are we talking about for the full 5 years?
So the annual expenditure based on historical use is about 30 million. And so the
30 million for 1 year.
For 1 year. Exactly. So the allocation of 130 is based on projected needs with these individual single source proprietary vendors. And so to give you a sense of scale, requisitions for maintenance are issued almost daily from the user divisions, from our bus division and our rail division, for compressors, consumables, joints, all that's needed to ensure that we have a safe, operational, reliable fleet. And so again, this is the maintenance that's essential so we're able to deliver the department's core service.
Understood. And I think, especially for safety purposes, for maintenance purposes, we want to make sure that money's allocated, right?
Yes.
But if we're already looking at other options, and we want to make sure that we're providing checks and balances for, possible misuse of funds by nefarious people, I really don't understand why we can't just allocate a yearly amount. If you're saying it's about 30, you said 30 million?
That is the projected use, yes.
Right. I mean, I think you were almost there, right? So
Well,
you said 25, right?
Yeah, so if I may, Madam Chair, on page 3 of the item, it says during the past fiscal year, 23-24, they spent approximately 24.3 million in parts and services towards the Metro bus, and it divides what they were used for. So that's where the 25 comes from.
Well, Madam Chair, through you.
Well, I want to take Metro Mover out of here, because my understanding is that what it costs to fix the thing, we could get something else. I mean, my issue, I have a Metro Mover issue, so, and I know, Jimmy, we talked about this.
But Jimmy, if and when we replace Metro Mover, we still got to fix it in the interim. So we still need to buy parts and services. So, I mean, look, whatever it is, the recommendation is in terms of time frame, we just need the ability to buy the parts and contract the laborers that are only available, usually either from the manufacturer or some other company. So
this is the daily maintenance needed to keep the system operational, and we can explore that long-term solution.
But Madam Chair, I mean, look, I'm just saying, why lock in for 5 years if we can just do this? We can just attribute the yearly every year.
Yes.
Is there
we can come back.
Is there a
Ashley, that's
safety
fine.
reason? Is there a specific reason as to why?
Jimmy
we
read
gotta
the
just-
room. Jimmy read the room.
We
He's
can come
agreed.
back annually. That's fine. And
Jimmy read the room.
hopefully, it'll give us the opportunity. We'll see how the program worked for a year, And perhaps then that'll give you all the confidence that, we're able to do it on a longer-term basis. That's fine.
And Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
So there seems to be a discrepancy, though, because the item is saying 24 point something million, you're saying 30 million. Which one
Right,
is it?
so we've identified these vendors, and so we have an idea based on past use of what we will need. And the 5-year term wasn't random. And so you have overhauls that are done every 2 to 5 years. You have maintenance schedules that we want to align, right? Because we compete in this market and you don't have many players, and we are the 10th largest transit entity in the country. And so this program allows us to get closer to the front of the line rather than now where we wait because we do a competitive process. We do an invitation to quote, and that can take up to 4 months. Plus, once you award the vendor, there's the lead time that goes into when you place the request and when they fulfill it. And as we wait, the system remains down, which is not what we want.
Got it.
Through the
And-
chair,
but what's the price figure, though? Is it 25 or is it 30?
Commissioner, what the team did was give you an estimate of what happened in the past. The average was 24.3 million. What they did was then they rounded up to 130 million over 5 years. If we are going to consider just doing 1 year, I think it would serve us well to do a 30 million for 1 year with the accountability that the Commissioner Orbis has asked for. The item also names the Chief Procurement Officer, Alonzo Joseph, as the person who we will hold accountable for making sure we get this work done according to the direction of this board. So you asked who was going to be responsible. We have an individual who's responsible. If we don't do the 5 years and we stick to 1 year, I think it would serve us well to give them an up to, not to exceed, 30 million so that they can do what needs to be done. I'm gravely concerned about the impact of inflation, tariffs, et cetera, on our purchasing power, because these are parts.
We know the drill.
So if we could do that, that would be very, very helpful.
Commissioner, are you okay with that?
Okay with that. I'm okay.
Okay. So, I just want to put on the record, no Metro Mover overhaul, just so that we have clarity. I know how much it's going to cost. I think it's ridiculous. All right, so can we have a motion with the amendment? You want to read it, Mr. Attorney? Are you good? 30 million 1 year, comes back? All right?
I'll move it.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? All right. Anything else? All right, folks, if all minds and hearts are clear, we adjourn.
Over 100 pages long, covering topics as disparate as farm worker housing, petroleum registration, and veterinary pathologists. But floor debate in the House centered on two things: fluoride and milk, specifically the labeling of plant-based products as milk, eggs, meat, or poultry.
Would it still be okay for the product to say this is oat milk? Or can it use the word milk at all? I mean, walk me through some real-life scenarios for oat milk, almond milk, some of these milk alternatives.
I think what we're looking for more is the truth in labeling. So almond beverage, oat beverage, something like that.